sizes are getting more of the traffic is flowing to the phone as the primary computing device. And usually, most retailers are now having the tablet and the desktop functionality essentially be the same. So what we're seeing is that phones now are about, on average for retailers, about 17% of sales, about 29% of their traffic, their total e-commerce traffic, and that growth in sales is growing more than 50% year over year. So really, really rapid growth. That's where a lot of desktop traffic is going. Now, what does that mean from percent of total? So these are US numbers. These are roughly similar to what we're seeing in other markets as well. I would suspect that markets like the UK, France, and Germany probably have percents that are similar. Spain, I think, tends to be a little bit less penetrated just because of the availability of merchandise is a little bit different. But in the US, e-commerce last year was about $334 billion. 299 of it was happening either on desktops or tablets. About 35 billion was happening on smartphones. So about 10% of total e-commerce was happening on the smartphone. However, the big point is that for every dollar that happens on the smartphone, almost 30 times as much happens offline. So it's the phone influencing offline sales. And I'll tell you how all of the different ways that we're seeing the phone influence offline sales. But that's a very, very important point because right now, most of the budgets for mobile commerce are coming from the e-commerce teams, not from the store teams. And this data says that it should be coming from the store teams because they've got the most to gain from investments in mobile. And then that's basically the difference here on the right side of the slide. That is web-influenced offline sales. On the left side of the slide are web sales. And these are roughly statistics that you can think about is that 10% of e-commerce happens, or less, happens on a smartphone. But for every euro spent on a smartphone, you have another 30 euros influenced in physical stores. So retailers are typically focusing on 3 different use cases for mobile. 1, how are store associates using mobile devices in the physical store? And typically, this is a very typical example where a store associate has a small tablet or they'll have a smartphone. Usually it's in a case that can be pretty protected in case it falls. And usually what it is to do 2 things, is to support endless aisles. So if a consumer can't see a SKU that they want in the physical store, the store associate can order it for them. The second is typically to manage checkout. So it's less common that consumers expect the store associate to be able to check out on a mobile device, but we expect that to happen into the future because those cloud-based POS devices are cheaper, they're easier to get set up, they're fully synchronized with a much more robust web order management system. And for new stores moving forward, we expect that to happen. Usually the upgrade cycle on POS machines can be a decade or more, and that's going to take a long time for stores today to completely rip out their hundreds of millions of dollars in investments and put in mobile functionality for checkout. But in the future, we expect that to happen. In the near term, it really is just about finding items that are not in your physical store, identifying items in nearby stores for customers. So what about apps? And what we're seeing is about 40% of retailers say that they have special apps for their store associates. If they have special apps, usually those apps are designed to provide endless aisles, showing additional items that are not in the physical store. Also, keep in mind that what is interesting is that I said earlier tablets are essentially dead. However, for retailers, when they invest in mobile in their stores, they are investing in tablets for their store associates because the screen size is bigger. Some of the other things that we're seeing retailers do for their store associates, I think this is a really, really interesting company. It's a company in Seattle called ZipWhip. And what it does is that it allows consumers to text landlines. So right now when you text a landline, because most retailers, most small retailers, they don't necessarily have phones, right? Or if you look at like maybe even a large chain like El Corte Inglés, they don't have, their store associates aren't picking up smartphones. They have landline phones in the physical store. Or restaurants, for instance, they often have landlines. So what these guys do is that they allow you as a customer you can text a landline, so you can send a text message. There's an interface on the PCs in those stores where they can see the message and they can respond, and it goes back as a text to that customer. So they are able to communicate via mobile even though they may not have mobile devices in physical stores. This is a good bridge solution until more stores become fully mobile enabled. Other solutions that we are seeing to support store associates, these are 4 apps essentially that are also essentially marketplaces that have been created by different companies in order to solve different store associate problems in the physical store. So on the left side, this is about checking store compliance. So there are 2 companies called Go Spot Check and Field Agent, and they're essentially marketplaces for mystery shoppers online. So that if a merchant or a store wants to make sure that in the field that the planogram has been set appropriately, or that the setup of the store is looking good, that is there. On the right side of the slide, these are so interesting. These are 2 of my most fascinating companies, I think it is a Shift Gig and Forge. And they're essentially Uber for store associates. So it is a marketplace of labor where if you may not have the same problem in Europe where people just are late for work or they don't show up for work. This happens all the time in kind of definitely in the US. And when that happens, you often are short on labor. But what these guys do is they allow you to see in your region or in your, kind of in your vicinity, is there another person who's trained in your systems who could potentially come in, quickly and be able to take that shift and help you from a labor standpoint. Particularly around the holiday season, that can be really, really interesting. So these are all mobile-driven solutions that are new and innovative. The second thing that we see retailers really focusing on is what are customers doing in stores, and how can you help shoppers in the physical store? And there are a few different things that we're seeing that retailers are doing to help customers. It's often about helping them compare prices, redeem coupons, and in some cases, retailers are investing in personalized coupons for customers where they can give certain people who they see as they're coming into a store or around a store different functions and different offers. 2 things, we do not see that a lot of customers really need to have Wi-Fi in physical stores. They're fine with, often their carrier network will allow them that functionality. And you don't really see a lot of people actively going and signing into a Wi-Fi network. So that's an important thing. I would get a lot of questions from retailers. Do we need to invest in Wi-Fi in our stores? It's a very expensive investment, and a lot of consumers don't care if they have it or not, so we're not seeing that it's a big deal. The last bit is that consumers are generally, they're lukewarm to store-based technologies. And those are things like touch screens in the physical store or kiosks in a physical store. More consumers tend to use their smartphones. At this point, virtually everyone in the developed world and even in the developing world, they have phones. And they're expecting to find the information like coupons and store location capabilities in the physical store. Now, some of the things that we are seeing where retailers are investing in physical stores is they're doing a much, much better job, particularly in large format stores, going down to where in the store a particular item is. So this is an example of a department store in the United States called Target, and on their app, they'll identify, they'll geosense what is the nearest store, which is on the left side. And then you can see this is a particular product, and it shows you, I don't know if you can see it, but in aisle A24 in that store, that's where that item is. So it's very much about how can you help customers in the store. I use this functionality all the time because every time I go into the store, I never know where an item is, or I spend time like looking, down the wrong aisle for 10 minutes. So this helps me save time. And same thing. This is an example from a drugstore.